See,
well, Naomi Wolf, we've got... Well, we're going to come back in the next little 5-minute segment and talk about it, but I just want to point out a few things for you about 9/11. I mean, I'm sure you're probably really aware of them, and you're valiantly in your prominent position even hinting at this, but or your questions, but we need to discuss government-sponsored terror, which has been declassified hundreds of times just by our government when we get back. Then we're also going to talk about solutions to this whole police state that's being set up. We'll be back with Naomi Wolf in 70 seconds. Naomi Wolf, multiple-time New York Times bestseller. New book, The End of America, The 10 Steps Towards Fascism. Actual handbooks on it. Our criminal governments taught the world how to do it for decades, showing it's bipartisan. Now they are using it right here, setting up a Pentagon-designed, MIT-designed control grid, the cameras, the face scanners, the national ID cards, all of it going into place. Naomi Wolf is our guest. Naomi, in this short segment, we've got you for the rest of the long segment coming up. And again, we're very honored and thankful for you coming on with us. And by the way, I've now had time to read your book. It's excellent.
Yeah.
And coming from your respected, research and name, it's such a help to try to turn the tide on this. And we'll talk about solutions in the next segment. The CIA was running drills of flying hijacked jets into the exact same targets at the exact same time that day. And the drills caused NORAD to be confused and basically stand down. Cheney was in the bunker. We've talked to Mineta 2 times since then. Transportation Secretary, he said no, Cheney was in there and did order a stand down. We have Muhammad Atta, the supposed lead hijacker, trained at the Pensacola Naval Air Station, trained at the Defense Language School. Sources, AP, San Jose Mercury News. Colonel Butler, the head of the school, said they trained him. I've talked to the 2 embassy heads, both from Ottawa and from Riyadh, U.S. officers, State Department officials. One of them, Mr. Springman, who was ordered to let the hijackers back in the U.S. when they were flagged as al-Qaeda, and they were told that al-Qaeda name designation is their CIA cover. I'm just listing a few of hundreds of smoking guns. And then we have Operation Northwoods, the official U.S. government plan to hijack jets, bomb D.C., commit sniper attacks, frame patsies, attack U.S. military bases with U.S. troops dressed up like Soviet forces. Gulf of Tonkin now admitted to be staged. Declassified the U.S. staged terror attacks in Europe. The former Italian president's gone public about 9/11 being an inside job. Former head of the German parliament's gone public. I mean, I'm just listing a few of these things. Former CIA section chief Europe. Bill Christensen's gone public. Robert Baer on this show. Movie Syriana's about him has said all the evidence points towards inside job. I mean, what do you say to that, Naomi?
Well, I guess one thing I say, since, I hang out with people who run the mainstream media and they don't have the sinister motivations that people often attribute to them, is if all of these pieces are so well sourced, why is this not being put together in a more kind of a mainstream context? That's A. B, and I'm sure you'll tell me in a minute, but my next statement, and I'm, again, happy to go on the record with this, is that I've been doing a lot of reading about history, whether it's very well-sourced books like Overthrow, which is about American neocolonialism in Latin America and Central America, and interviewing Professor Elke Bomer, who's a professor of British colonialism at Oxford University. And it's clear from both of those that it is standard practice for governments to stage provocations when they want to drive through a foreign policy goal or even a domestic policy goal that they can't manage otherwise. And she said that, British colonialism kind of perfected it. It's just, part of the tools in the toolkit. And she mentioned a number of incidences, and she said, British colonialism is the teacher for U.S. colonialism. And I know that...
What are a few of those examples? This is intriguing.
It is intriguing. Well, I'm still researching it, but she mentioned 2 that I can shoot you by email, and you can post them once I follow up with her. But in Overthrow, you can see a number, and you can look at the regime change in Nicaragua and in the Philippines, and I think Cuba. And again, I don't have the details to give you right now.
Well, let me just give them to you. There's over 200 U.S. declassified examples of where they admit they blew up school buses, bombed buildings, shot people. You ever seen the Graham Greene Quiet American movie?
No.
Well, that's fictionalized, but based on real.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the movie is fictionalized, but it's based on real things that happened in Vietnam, where the CIA early on in the early '60s, when they were taken over from the French in Indochina, would just blow up a market and then have the news put out but the North Vietnamese did it. And it's just standard operating procedure. And so, yes, I figured you'd be informed on that. So if they do it over and over again and admit they've done it, why now are we supposed to believe them when they have the motive? Peter Power, the former head of Scotland Yard counterterrorism, was running a drill of the exact same trains being attacked at the exact same time at the exact same locations on 7/7 in 2005. He's admitted that on BBC and ITN. He was confronted by We Are Change UK at an event last night, ran from the podium and hid in a closet until they were forced to leave. That's how scared they are of this info. We Are Change UK is joining us at the bottom of the hour. Then we've got Daniel Estelin. By the way, Naomi, I'm sending you a copy of his new Bilderberg book, who's been covering Bilderberg for 15 years, joining us from Spain to discuss this. Naomi Wolf and I, best-selling author now of the new book, of course, The End of America, The 10 Steps Towards Fascism that are being implemented, available at Amazon.com, bookstores everywhere. We're talking about, if it's such a dark, bleak picture and governments have admitted they've staged events in the past, she was saying, well, what do we tell people to do? How do we counter it? First, you have to admit to yourself and go do the research to find out what I'm saying is true to the listeners. And then B, you've got to get over the fear factor. There's a subconscious fear hanging back, even myself. I had pangs of fear during the last break thinking, my gosh, I'm exposing hardcore murderers who'll go wipe out whole villages and blame it on somebody else. I mean, who'll blow up apartment buildings and blame it on somebody else in Latin America or in Russia or in the U.S. or in England. And they'll come, they could come and kill me tomorrow. But by being vocal, by being up front, by getting out on the field and saying, I'm ready to stand up against you, that gives you the ultimate safety. If we become like a third world nation and just give in to corruption, give in to police with machine guns on the street corners, third world banana republic, it's over. And I don't think our police and military want that. Most of our military are good people. Most of our police are good people. Most intelligence folks are good. They're compartmentalized. They're out doing good things or collecting data they think is for good that is then compartmentalized out and then put together down the chain. I mean, Naomi, here's an example. I've interviewed a lot of Rhodes Scholars, and most of them, believe in global harmony and love and believe in globalism because, it's everyone working together in community of nations and feeding and helping the poor. But they haven't actually read the writings of Cecil Rhodes. So, I mean, there's your answer. You asked me during the break, why doesn't the media, and I'm not trying to pontificate, but you asked a question, so I'm trying to give you my answer. I'm not saying it's totally correct. I want your view. But, you were saying, well, if this is all documented in source, and I'm raising some issues that you've sourced yourself, then why isn't the mainstream media reporting? A lot of it is a cage of their own mind. They're in the system. They're in the controlled left-right paradigm. I mean, you're very intelligent, probably a lot smarter than I am, higher IQ. You're just now learning about a lot of this. So my point is there's so much width and breadth of history and sociology and society and the geopolitical strata and makeup that these people don't know about that, and they're within a controlled paradigm. I mean, does that make any sense?
Yeah, it actually does, and I want to say two things very clearly. One is that in my saying, history is full of examples of staged provocations, including in countries like Britain and the U.S., I'm not saying that we know that this was a staged provocation that we're talking about. I don't know. What I'm saying is that it is not rational to rule out anything given how replete the historical record is of such things, including by our own government. That's why we need a rigorous investigation. And, all I've said before, and I think it's legitimate, is that, how can we be satisfied with the investigation there as if the 9/11 families aren't satisfied? The second thing is we just found out that the 9/11 Commission was denied, knowledge of these tapes that would have shown, and I've just blogged about this and I'm very proud of my blog. It's about torture and it's about America's use of torture. And, people